Today's daf is Kuf Lamed Zayin 137. We're going to start in the new Mishnah here. So Mishayu lo Shnei Tinokot. We're still on the topic of Brit Milah. A little bit of discussion of Shabbat, Hilchot Shabbat as it pertains to Brit Milah, and then we're going to get into some of the laws of Brit Milah, even irrespective of Shabbat, like some of the traditions of Brit Milah. Very interesting. So Mishayu lo Shnei Tinokot echad lamul achara Shabbat, echad lamul b'Shabbat. So you have the following problem. The mohel has two. He has a double gig. There are two kids in the same place. Both require a brit milah. One was born on Shabbat and was supposed to be circumcised on Shabbat. The other one was born on Sunday and was supposed to be circumcised on Sunday. So now, obviously, the one who was born on Shabbat and is supposed to be circumcised on Shabbat, you're allowed to circumcise on Shabbat. There's no question. The one that was born on Sunday, his time for circumcision hasn't even arrived yet on Shabbat. It's too early. So the Mishnah says, "V'shachach umal et shel achara Shabbat b'Shabbat chayav." So he accidentally took the baby that was supposed to be circumcised tomorrow, and he did the brit milah on Shabbat. So he did two problems. Number one, he did the brit milah too early, which is a different issue, separate issue, but more significant for our Masekhet is he violated Shabbat because he didn't have the permission to circumcise this child on Shabbat. This child wasn't ready for circumcision yet. So chayav, he's considered to have desecrated Shabbat. Bishogeg, of course. It's an inadvertent desecration. But he would have to bring, he lived in the times of the Beit HaMikdash, he would have to bring a korban chatat for the inadvertent desecration of Shabbat. Now, echad lamul b'erev Shabbat v'echad lamul b'Shabbat. Let's say you have a different story. One was supposed to be circumcised on Friday. The other one was supposed to be circumcised on Shabbat. V'shachach umalet shel erev Shabbat b'Shabbat. And what did he do? What he did was he messed up. He circumcised the one that was supposed to be circumcised on Shabbat. I'm sorry, the one that was supposed to be circumcised on erev Shabbat, he circumcised on Shabbat. So it seems slightly less bad. Why? Because the one that was supposed to be circumcised on Friday, at least his time for circumcision had arrived. So when the mohel actually circumcises him on Shabbat, even though he's not supposed to do the brit on Shabbat, because this baby was born on a Friday and was supposed to be circumcised on Friday, but since at least it was a milah kshera, the milah was a valid milah because it was a day late. The day late, it's still valid, so it's a little bit less. It's a little bit less bad, so to speak. So Rabbi Eliezer mechayev chatat. However, Rabbi Eliezer says he is still liable for a sin offering. Meaning, since this baby's brit was not supposed to be done on Shabbat, even though it was a valid brit, still he violated Shabbat. And Rabbi Yoshua poter. Rabbi Yoshua says, you know what? Even though he wasn't supposed to circumcise this child on Shabbat, Rashi says, "Ta'a b'dvar mitzvah v'yasa mitzvah patur." If a person made a mistake in the course of doing a mitzvah, and remember, one of these children was in fact supposed to be circumcised on Shabbat, so the mohel had a reason to think he was supposed to be doing a circumcision on Shabbat. He messed up, but he accomplished a goal. In other words, at least what he did, so his intention was to do a mitzvah. The result was a mitzvah was done. So Rabbi Yoshua is lenient. In the first case, he intended to do a mitzvah, but the result was a mitzvah was not done, because the circumcision he did actually didn't count, because it was too early. It was day 7. But here, at least the circumcision that was done counted, so Rabbi Yoshua is more lenient in that case. The Gemara says, Rav Huna matnei chayav, Rav Yehuda matnei patur. You have two versions of the Mishnah that we just read. Okay, Rav Huna has exactly what we have in our Mishnah, which is that in the first case, where the circumcision was done prematurely, it was supposed to be Sunday and instead it was done on Shabbat, that chayav, everyone agrees you desecrated Shabbat and there's no leniency. However, Rav Yehuda had a different version that actually the argument was in the first case, that in the first case where the child was supposed to be circumcised on Sunday and was accidentally circumcised on Shabbat, that even there, Rabbi Yehoshua was the one saying, Patur, you're exempt for doing it, even though the time of circumcision hasn't arrived yet. That was Rav Yehuda's version of the Mishnah, so to speak. Now, let's go back to the original version. Rav Huna matne chayav ditanya. Why does Rav Huna support our version of the Mishnah? Because it's supported in a Baraita. Amar Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar said, Lo nechliku Rabbi Elazar Rabbi Yoshua al mi shehayu lo bet tinokot echad lamul b'Shabbat ve'echad lamul achar Shabbat v'shachach umalet shel achar Shabbat b'Shabbat shu chayav. They never argued, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says. They never argued about a case where one baby was supposed to be circumcised on Shabbat, the other baby was supposed to be circumcised on Sunday, and he accidentally circumcised the Sunday baby on Shabbat. That chayav, that's definitely a desecration of Shabbat. He definitely is liable for desecrating Shabbat. Alma nechleku, where did they have a machloket? Al mishayu lo shnei tinokot, echad lamul be'erev Shabbat, ve'echad lamul b'Shabbat, v'shachach umal shel erev Shabbat b'Shabbat. Where is the argument between Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer? In a case where the baby was supposed to be circumcised on Friday, and you accidentally circumcised it on Shabbat. She Rabbi Eliezer mechayev chatat, Rabbi Yoshua poter. Because Rabbi Eliezer says you are chayav chatat, you're liable for desecrating Shabbat, and Rabbi Yoshua says you're exempt because you intended to do a mitzvah and you accomplished a goal. What you did counted. You weren't supposed to circumcise the baby that day. It's a day late, but it counted. So that's what Rabbi Yoshua says. Now this is the same as our Mishnah. Ushnehem lo lamdua ella me'avodat kochavim. And both of them derive their positions, their respective positions, from a comparison to idolatry. Where do we learn the idea that somebody who violates a prohibition that carries the penalty of karet, that if it were performed intentionally, you would get karet, that for such a prohibition, for such a violation, if it's done unintentionally, you bring a korban chatat, you would bring a sin offering. So we learn that from idolatry, from the case of idolatry, where it says, if a person does it biyad ramah, if they do it high-handedly, they do it purposely, that they are cut off from their people, they get karet, but if they do it unintentionally, that's when they have to bring a korban. So Rabbi Eliezer savar kavodat kochavim, avodat kochavim amar Rachmana lo ta'aved v'chiyaved mechayev hachanami lo shena. So Rabbi Eliezer says, just like with idolatry, the Torah says not to do it, and you did it. So too here, the Torah says you can't circumcise this infant on Shabbat, and you did it. So what difference does it make that you intended to do a mitzvah? It doesn't matter.
Does it matter that he's chayav the korban chatat from desecration of Shabbat, or that he's delaying the milah? Because both of them. Yeah. I mean, delaying the milah is just a mitzvah aseh problem. So there's no consequence. But that's one of the two. Yeah, but it's not. But you don't get, the mohel doesn't get karet, and the baby's too little to get karet. Oh, it's on the father.
Yeah, it's on the father. He doesn't get karet though. I mean, he has an obligation. The obligation of milah for a baby is actually on people who are not culpable if they don't do it. It's just a mitzvah. For the child, actually, is responsible when he becomes an adult, that if he wasn't circumcised, then he could get karet, but otherwise not. So for Rabbi Yoshua, hatam delav mitzvah hacham mitzvah, and Rabbi Yoshua says, yes, we do make an equation to idolatry. When a person unintentionally worships idolatry, is he doing a mitzvah? No. But here he's doing a mitzvah. So how can you compare it to the usual case of desecration? There's a mitigating factor. The mitigating factor is that it was unintentionally desecrated, but while the person was intending to do a mitzvah, so we should give him a little bit of leeway. We should give him a little leniency here and not require him to bring the korban chatat. It doesn't override it. It does not. You're not allowed to do it. Override means you're allowed to do it. Here it doesn't override because the mitzvah was to do it on Friday. And you accidentally did it on Shabbat. You messed up. But since you messed up and did a mitzvah, maybe we don't require you to bring a korban chatat because it's not purely a violation, it was really a mitzvah. So we're going to give you a break. That's what Rabbi Yoshua is saying. Now, Rav Yehuda matnei patur. Rav Yehuda maintained an alternative version of the Mishnah in which the cases are different. And where did he get his idea from? Ditanya, as it says in a different Braita. Amar Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Meir says, in other words, Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar and Rabbi Meir each had a different version of what the argument was between Rabbi Yoshua and Rabbi Eliezer. And based on what you think the argument is, your version of the Mishnah is going to differ. So our Mishnah had that the case where the baby was due to be circumcised on Sunday and was circumcised on Shabbat, there's no leniency because you didn't even do a mitzvah when you circumcised the baby early. But if it was born on Friday and you circumcised him on Shabbat, there at least you could say you did a mitzvah. Rav Yehuda says no. I'm going with Rabbi Meir's version of the dispute. Amar Rabbi Meir says, Lo nechluku Rabbi Eliezer Rabbi Yoshua al mi shehayu lo shnei tinokot echad lamul be'erev Shabbat ve'echad lamul b'Shabbat v'shachach umalet shel erev Shabbat b'Shabbat shu patur. Actually, Rabbi Meir says they're even more lenient than you think. Everybody agrees, according to Rabbi Meir, everybody agrees that if the baby that was supposed to be circumcised on Friday was circumcised on Shabbat, he's exempt. Because at least he did a mitzvah. In other words, what the first version said was only Rabbi Yehoshua's view. According to Rabbi Meir, everybody agrees. That's the baseline. The baseline is that if the baby was supposed to be circumcised on Friday and was accidentally circumcised on Shabbat, that he's exempt. The circumciser, the mohel, is exempt. Al man nechleku al mishayulo shenei tinokot echad lamul achara Shabbat v'echad lamul b'Shabbat. Shechachu malet shel achara Shabbat b'Shabbat. Sherabi Eliezer mechayev chatad. V'Rabbi Yoshua poter. In other words, what he says is he pushes things a notch down in severity. So our Mishnah had, when the baby was born on Sunday and you circumcised it on Shabbat by accident, everybody agrees you have to bring a korban chatat, you violated Shabbat. If the baby is born on Friday and you circumcised it on Shabbat, there's an argument. He says no. If the baby was born on Friday and you circumcised it on Shabbat, everybody agrees you're exempt because at least you did a mitzvah. But if the baby was born on Sunday and you preempted and circumcised on Shabbat, there you have a machloket. Rabbi Eliezer says you violated Shabbat, you have to bring a korban chatat. Rabbi Yoshua says exempt from a korban chatat. So in other words, Rabbi Yoshua, according to this version, exempts you in both cases. And Rabbi Eliezer agrees that in a case where the baby was born on Friday, if you circumcised on the 9th day on Shabbat, that you would be exempt as well.
What's Rabbi Eliezer's reason for
exempting in the case of the Sunday? He doesn't. That's Rabbi Yoshua. Rabbi Yoshua exempts. So let's see what it is. They didn't explain that yet. So again, they both learned that from idolatry. Rabbi Eliezer savar kavodat kochavim avodat kochavim amar Rachmana lo tabed v'chiabed mechayev hachanami lo shena. Because Rabbi Eliezer says, listen, you violated Shabbat, you didn't do a mitzvah. That's exactly the case of idolatry. We said that we're following the model of unintentional idolatry. Unintentional idolatry, you know, there's no mitzvah involved, and here there's no mitzvah involved. You didn't do a mitzvah. But Rabbi Yoshua hatam lo tarid mitzvah. Haka tarid mitzvah. Rabbi Yoshua says there's a difference. Because over there with idolatry, there's no mitzvah element at all. Here, why did the guy violate Shabbat? He didn't want to violate Shabbat. He thought he was doing a mitzvah. So true, he wasn't doing one, okay, and he didn't accomplish one because he circumcised a baby that really should have been circumcised on Sunday, and now he messed up, he did it too early. But still, he was tarud. He was in the framework, the mental framework, preoccupied with doing a mitzvah. And because he was trying to do a mitzvah, we give him leniency. So in the first version, Rabbi Yoshua was only lenient when a mitzvah was actually accomplished. And he said, well, a mitzvah was actually accomplished, that's a matter that mitigates the crime, so to speak. Here he's saying, even if the person was preoccupied with a mitzvah, he had in his mind a preoccupation and a desire to do a mitzvah, even though there was no mitzvah actually accomplished, we still give him a break. So Rabbi Eliezer in the second version is following Rabbi Yoshua in the first version, basically. Rabbi Eliezer is saying, if he actually accomplished a mitzvah, I'll give him a break. If he didn't, I'm not going to give him a break. Rabbi Yoshua says, even if his calculation was to do a mitzvah, even though one was not accomplished, we'll still be lenient. Tanei Rabbi Chia Omer, Rabbi Chia said, Tane, it says in the Braita, Rabbi Chia taught, Omer Haya Rabbi Meir used to say, Lo nechliku Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yoshua, Al Mishayu lo shnei tinokot, echad mo be'erev Shabbat, v'echad mo b'Shabbat, v'shachach mo malet shel erev Shabbat b'Shabbat, shu chayav. This is the third version. This third version doesn't seem to make any sense, actually. Okay, Rabbi Chia's version is the opposite way. That if the baby was a Friday baby, and therefore the brit was supposed to be yesterday, and today is Shabbat, and we circumcised the baby on Shabbat, that's where everyone agrees he is chayav. Everyone agrees that's the worst case, according to Rabbi Chia's version. How could that be the worst case? Well, let's see. That what was the case of leniency? The only case of leniency was where the baby was supposed to be circumcised on Sunday and it was preempted and circumcised on Shabbat. How could that be? How could it be? That doesn't make any sense. So the Gemara asks, Hashta Rabbi Yoshua Sefer de la Kavid Mitzvah Poter, Reshad de Kavid Mitzvah Mechayev? You're telling me in a case where the brit was supposed to be tomorrow, it was supposed to be on Sunday, and I circumcised on Shabbat, there Rabbi Yoshua is going to be lenient. But in a case where the circumcision was supposed to be on Friday and I circumcised it the next day, where at least I accomplished a mitzvah, there he's not going to be lenient? So why would it be that in a case where the mitzvah is accomplished, he's more stringent, and in a case where the mitzvah is not accomplished, he's more lenient? So Amrei Dvei Rabbi Yanai, the Yeshiva of Rabbi Yanai said, Reisha kigon shekadam umal shel Shabbat be'erev Shabbat, de la nitna Shabbat lidachot. Sefa nitna Shabbat lidachot. So Rabbi Yanai's Yeshiva said, it goes like this, that when the person circumcised, in other words, in the first case what happened was that he switched them both. In other words, he circumcised the Shabbat baby on Friday. This mohel is totally confused. He circumcised the Shabbat baby on Friday. And then he went and circumcised the Friday baby on Shabbat. So what's the problem? So in the case where he did that, there was no heter at all to circumcise on Shabbat. Because the baby that was supposed to be circumcised on Shabbat had already been circumcised erroneously early. So now he couldn't make up for it anymore. He'll have to redo a hatafat dam brit later. Okay, he can't make up for it anymore. So what's the point? When there was a heter, in other words, in that case, there was no permission to violate that Shabbat at all. Because the baby that was actually supposed to be circumcised on Shabbat was pre-circumcised on Friday. So there went the legitimacy of circumcising anybody on Shabbat. And the one that was supposed to be circumcised on Friday is now being circumcised on Shabbat, but there's actually no baby that's allowed to be circumcised on Shabbat. Whereas, in the second case, the one that was supposed to be circumcised on Sunday was circumcised on Shabbat, but there was actually a baby that was supposed to be circumcised on Shabbat. It just wasn't that one. So this mohel actually had permission to desecrate Shabbat, or to override Shabbat, to circumcise baby A, and he accidentally circumcised baby B, but really he had permission to circumcise. In the first case, he didn't have permission to circumcise on Shabbat at all, because the one that actually legitimized his circumcision on Shabbat was already circumcised by accident. It's okay? So that's how the Gemara answers it. Amar le Rav Ashi, Rav Ashi said le Rav Kahana, according to you, that reasoning doesn't make any sense. Why? Because there's always a baby somewhere in the world that could be circumcised on this Shabbat. So what do I care whether this mohel has permission to circumcise one of the babies in front of him or not? Say he's a mohel, and there's probably a baby out there somewhere in the world that needs a circumcision today on Shabbat. So therefore, any baby he erroneously circumcises on Shabbat, there should be leniency. Because what difference does it make if the baby's in this room or somewhere else? There's a baby somewhere that could be circumcised today. Rather, what does Rav Ashi say? So he says, so what did they say to him? Lahai gavra miha la ityehev. Rav Kahana answered him and said, that's true, but this mohel didn't have permission to circumcise. In other words, he only had in front of him. We don't look at the universe and say that somewhere in the world there's permission to circumcise a baby, therefore you can circumcise a baby. We say this mohel had two mitzvot in front of him that he was actually going to do. And once he had the mitzvah in front of him, that gave him the ability to override the Shabbat. So in the case where he accidentally circumcised the Shabbat baby on Friday, that permission is gone. So when he goes to circumcise the Friday baby on Shabbat, he actually has no legitimate basis for circumcising any baby on Shabbat. Because there's no baby in front of him that's supposed to be circumcised that Shabbat. Whereas the Sunday case, where the Sunday baby was circumcised on Shabbat, at least the other baby that was there was supposed to be circumcised that Shabbat. He's going to accidentally now circumcise it on Sunday. Okay? But there was actually a permission for that particular mohel in that particular circumstance to circumcise on Shabbat. And that's why it's a more lenient case according to the second version. Now, the new Mishnah says, Katan dimo l'shmona l'tish'a v'la'asara u'la'achad u'l'yudbet lo pachot v'lo yoter. A child can be circumcised on the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, or 12th day. Oh, you mean which version is correct? I believe that the one that's codified is the second version. Is not the one that appears in our Mishnah, but the second version is the one that comes down in the Rambam as the halacha. Yeah, the more counterintuitive. Oh no, the middle one rather, not the last one. The middle one. The most lenient, right? The most lenient one is the one that actually comes out to be the halacha. That Rabbi Yoshua said that in both cases you're patur. That was the one that that's agreed upon. However, in the case, Rabbi Chia is adding that in a case where the Shabbat baby was circumcised on Friday, now that might not apply anymore. Right, that's a different issue. But assuming that there's a Shabbat baby around and you accidentally circumcised, whether it's a preemptive or a delayed, as long as there's a baby there who would have been circumcised that Shabbat, according to Rabbi Yeshua, you're exempt from a korban chatat.
In
that case.
That mistake, the Gemara or the rabbis seem to say that the recipient, the baby, doesn't matter. Who the baby is doesn't matter. But the other one, it does matter. You had...
In the first case, it didn't matter whether there was a baby around, who needed to be circumcised on Shabbat at all.
Right.
It did, because the case was always that there were two babies, one of which did have to be circumcised on Shabbat. So they were always assuming that there was at least one of the two babies that was there. Because it says, Mishahaya lefanav, shayu lefanav, shnei tinokot, in front of him they had two babies. He just mixed them up, because they didn't have like those cool bracelets, that they have now that tell you exactly who the baby is. So he got confused, all babies looked the same, he didn't know. You've seen one, you've seen them all. So now, the new Mishnah says that now this is not talking about a sick baby. Obviously, if a baby is sick, God forbid, or has jaundice or some other condition, sometimes we'll delay a Brit Milah for much more than 12th day. Sometimes the baby will have to wait a few weeks, or even more than that, to have a circumcision. So we're talking about here, what is the latest that a healthy baby who's born would possibly have their circumcision delayed because of halachic factors only, not medical factors. Medical factors are a different ballgame, and we know that in a medical situation we delay the circumcision even as long as we need to. But here we're talking about halachic factors, so it can go up to 12 days. So haketzad kedarko lishmona. So obviously the minimum is 8 days. You never circumcise before 8 days.
This was on the 8th day?
On the 8th day. The 8th day. Well, once the 8th day passes, the mitzvah is still there, but you missed the ideal. So, nolad le ben hashemashot. What happens if the baby is born on ben hashemashot, which means to say it was born Saturday towards the end of Shabbat? We don't know. It was right past sunset. We don't know if it was really Sunday or Saturday. So what do? So in that case, obviously we're going to circumcise on Sunday because we don't really know. Now that it could very well be that that's actually the 9th day. Because really this baby could have been born on Shabbat. And really he has to be circumcised on Shabbat. But if we have a doubt about whether a child was born on Shabbat or not, we're not going to desecrate Shabbat. We're going to wait till Sunday, even though that may well be the 9th day.
Well, it would be the same thing if it was Tuesday to Wednesday, or just any other regular day, right? If it was Ben Hashemah.
True, yeah. That could be in any case, right? It could be in any case. Not just on Shabbat. We're just using that because we're going to see that comes in that way. So, Ben Hashemashot shel Erev Shabbat, Nimo la'asara. Now you have a more complicated case when the baby's born. You're right, any Ben Hashemashot in the first case would be the same. That if it's born Ben Hashemashot on Wednesday, you don't know if it was really Wednesday or Thursday, you're going to wait for the later day. You're right, because you don't want to have it too early. So that's any weekday. But the second case is, let's say it's Friday, Ben Hashemashot, after sunset, baby's born. Now I'm in real trouble, because either the baby was a Friday baby or a Shabbat baby. Now, if it was a Friday baby, that's fine. But if it was a Shabbat baby, really I'm supposed to do it on Shabbat. And if I did it on Friday, it would be no good. It would be too early. But the only problem is that I don't know if it's Shabbat. So I'm stuck. So I can't do it on Friday because it might really be a Shabbat baby. And I can't do it on Shabbat because it might have really been a Friday baby. And then I'd be desecrating Shabbat. So what do I end up having to do?
Sunday.
Waiting for Sunday. And Sunday is actually day 10, hypothetically. Because the 8th day could very well have been Friday. So I had to wait Shabbat and I had to wait till Sunday. That's an additional delay. Now, okay, that's a whole complicated thing. If it's within, a certain amount of time after sunset, so we still treat it as Friday. That wouldn't matter. Lighting candles wouldn't matter, but whether once the sun sets, now you have problems. So Chacham Ovadia has a certain amount of time after the sun sets that we could still be lenient and consider it Friday, but there's different opinions on that. Now, Yom Tov Lachara Shabbat. What happens if Shabbat? Very nice. So this happens. You're the most unlucky guy in the world. So your baby is born on Friday, right after sunset. Now Sunday is the first day of Pesach, or whatever, some Chag, and you live in Israel, so you only have 1 day of Yom Tov. Okay. Now what do? So you have the problem. So really, you already had this problem that you were going to have to wait till Sunday. Why? Because you don't know that it could be Friday, but you don't know. So you have to wait till Shabbat. Oh, I can't do it on Shabbat. I don't know if it's Shabbat or Friday. So since I don't know if it could be that it's Shabbat, but I don't know, so I can't do it. So I have to wait till Sunday. Oh, sorry, Sunday is Yom Tov. Can't do it on Yom Tov. A delayed, it's definitely a delayed brit for sure, because the only two possibilities were Friday or Shabbat. So now I come to Sunday and I can't do Sunday because it's Yom Tov. So what am I going to have to do Monday? So Monday's already day 11 possibly, because Friday might have actually been the 8th day. I wasn't sure, but now I end up having to push it all the way.
No, you can have a birthday.
What? No, you can do anything. Purim is, you can drive. You can do a Brit Milah, we're talking about where there's an Isur Melacha. Because the Melacha is doing the Brit Milah. So any day that you can't do Melacha is a concern. Now, there's an interesting machlok between Ashkenazim and Sfaradim. The Rambam says that you can do a delayed Brit Milah on Yom Tov Sheni. He allows you to do a delayed Brit Milah on the second day of Yom Tov. And you can see why he would get that from the following statement in the Mishnah in a moment. Because he says... So that's Nimola Achadasar. So Bet Yamim Shal Rosh Hashanah, you're even more unlucky because in your case, Sunday and Monday was Rosh Hashanah. So now you already delayed Friday to Shabbat. You're not sure if it's Friday or Shabbat, so you had to delay to Shabbat, you had to delay to Sunday. Sunday is not only Yom Tov, it's actually Rosh Hashanah. So Sunday and Monday you can't do it now, because you have 2 days of Rosh Hashanah. So you have Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday. You still can't do it till Tuesday. That is the 12th. That's the latest it can ever be delayed halachically. Okay? Nimol l'shneim asar. Then your Nimol l'shneim asar, you have to wait till the 12th day, which is Tuesday. And then he says, the Mishnah ends by saying, Katana chole en mo'alin oto ad shiavri. Obviously, a child who's sick, you don't circumcise until he gets better. Okay? Now, what's the point here? Now you can see what the Rambam gets, because the Mishnah is saying there's never a time you wait past 12. And the Gemara doesn't say any qualification of that. It doesn't say, well, with 2 days of Pesach or 2 days of Sukkot, that you should have to wait. So the Rambam actually allows you to do a Brit Milah, delayed Brit Milah, on Yom Tov Sheni only. This is similar to, for instance, when a person is, if a person's in mourning, for example, somebody passes away, and they have Yom Tov, so they can actually count the second day of Yom Tov as the first day of Avelut. So let's say somebody's buried during Chol HaMoed, for example, right? So it's because if they're buried right on Erev Yom Tov, so they start the Shiva and they end it on the same day. So let's say they're buried on during Chol HaMoed Pesach. So you can't start the Shiva until after Pesach. But the second day of Yom Tov at the end counts towards the count. So you end up only having to have 6 days of Shiva in that case. So sometimes we allow the second day of Yom Tov a little bit of leniency. Or for example, one can bury, you can have a Levaya on the second day of Yom Tov. They do it in Brooklyn, in the Hasidic communities. They do Levayot on the second day of Yom Tov, because the Gemara says you can do a burial on Yom Tov Sheni. It's okay. We don't do it in most communities today for many reasons, one of which is that people will drive. It's better. We're not in communities where people are going to observe the halacha of not driving to the funeral, and moreover, you're going to have problems of. In the old days, like Rav Moshe Feinstein said, in the old days they didn't have refrigeration, so there was really a concern that the body would become, it would be disgraceful if they didn't hurry up the burial. So nowadays we don't have that concern as much, so we're able to delay the funeral. Now,
yeah. In this case of sometimes Shavuot can be. First day of Shavuot is on a Friday.
True.
The second day is on Shabbat. In that case, Shabbat overrides it, so you still would have to wait till Sunday. For sure. Right.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Of course. Yes, so now the Gemara says, Amar Shmuel says, Chalatztu chama notnim lo kol zayin lahavroto. If a child came down with a serious fever through his entire body, so he's seriously ill, and he gets healthy, we wait 7 days before giving him a Brit Milah. We don't do it the day he gets better. We don't do it the next day, after it clears up, but we wait 7 days after. They asked the question, do you have to wait 24-hour days? In other words, do we multiply 24 times 7 and make it a full week that you have to wait? In other words, in terms of hours, quantitatively, or is it enough to count days? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and in the morning of that 8th day, you can circumcise him. So Tashma, come and listen. The Tanei Luda taught, Yom Havra'ato ki Yom Ivalido. That the day gets better is like the day is born. Just like the day is born is day 1, and then on day 8 you have the circumcision. You don't have to wait, right? My love, my yomi valido lo ba'inan me'ed la'et, af yomi havra'ato lo ba'inan me'ed la'et. If a baby is born in the afternoon on Tuesday, you don't say, well, I can't do the Brit Milah in the morning on Tuesday because he was born in the afternoon. We have to wait till the afternoon till he's fully 8 days old. You don't say that, do you?
No.
No, of course not. 8th day is 8th day. So same too, it sounds like you're saying the same thing. The day that he gets better, now you count 7 days after that, the 8th day. In the morning you can do it. Let's say he got better in the afternoon. It doesn't matter. You can do it in the morning. So, lo. Adif yom havra'ato yom hivalado. Dilu yom hivalado lo b'inam me'id la'id, ve'lu yom havra'ato ba'inam me'id la'id. There are certain respects in which the day of getting better is like the day of being born, but not in this respect. That in this respect you actually have to wait a full 24-hour period. So therefore what the Gemara is saying is we can't conclude. We can only learn from Luda's teaching that you have to wait till the 8th day. That's what he meant. But unlike a child's birth, where we only have to wait till the 8th day and we're not concerned about the amount of hours that have elapsed, when it comes to a health concern, the principle of the counting of 7 days is, for a health concern, it has to go by the actual hour. So if the child got better, let's say, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Tuesday, you have to wait till 4 o'clock in the afternoon on the next Tuesday. You can't do it in the morning on the following Tuesday. The Mishnah says, now we get into the details of what is considered indispensable for the performance of the mitzvah Brit Milah, because we learned earlier that a person can do cutting and removing foreskin, and it can be insufficient to satisfy the requirements of the mitzvah. And there's a certain amount that has to be removed that's considered ma'akev, indispensable to the mitzvah. So what is indispensable to the mitzvah? So basara chofet rova atara, that the flesh or the foreskin that covers the majority of what's called the atara, the corona. What that means, that's not the beer. That's the, this is a part of the anatomy. So it's the very top of the penis area, which has sort of a circle around it. So we're talking about the very top, the part that curves in it's almost a cone shape. That's what they're talking about. So that area, what covers the majority of that part, and as the Gemara is going to explain, it doesn't have to be the majority of the circumference, even the majority of the height, meaning even if a strip of skin goes from the bottom of that part and covers the majority of the height of it, that's also considered that the child is not circumcised. He wouldn't be able to eat teruma. If the child is obese, corpulent, we might say, the chunky child, so then the problem is that the skin might be a little more elastic or a little flappier and might cover over that area, even though the foreskin has been removed. So we have to remove a little bit more skin to make sure that the child appears circumcised, as we're going to see more in the Gemara about that. Mal velo para et hamila. If you simply cut off the foreskin, but you don't remove the membrane under the foreskin, that's called peri'ah. There are 2 steps to the Brit Milah. One is cutting off the foreskin. The other one is removing the membrane immediately under the foreskin. To me, the more painful part to watch of the 2 steps. There, ki'ilu lo mal. It's as if he didn't perform the Brit Milah at all, because mal velo para ki'ilu lo mal. It's a famous saying that if you just remove the foreskin but you did not remove the underlying membrane, you did not perform the mitzvah at all. Now the Gemara says, Amar Rabbi Avina, Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba, Amar Rav. Rabbi Avina said that Rabbi Yirmiyah bar Abba said that Rav said, Basar chofet rov gova shel atara, that what we define as the covering the majority of the corona is when it covers the height, not necessarily all around, but even just in one spot, if it covers the majority of the height, or what you might call the length of it, or whatever you want, however you want to describe it, is considered still uncircumcised. Then we said Vimaya bal basar. We talked about if the child is heavy, is overweight, that you have to remove more skin to make sure he appears circumcised. Amar Shmuel says Katana Masur bal babasar. If a child is immersed in flesh, meaning he's got a lot of meat on his bones, so there ro'inoto kozman shemit kashev v'nir amahul eno tzarich lamul v'im lav tzarich lamul. If in an erect state, basically, like when a child has to urinate, he'll be in an erect state. We're not talking about sexual arousal here because we're talking about a child, a baby, but you'll see that that organ will become erect when the child has to urinate. So if we see at that time, he says, if he looks circumcised at that point, that's enough. Okay? But if he doesn't look circumcised at that point, then you have to circumcise him. So if when he is not erect, he appears uncircumcised, apparently that wouldn't be such a big deal. That's what Shmuel seems to be saying. B'matnitatana, in a Tosefta we learned Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel Omer Katana Mesur Bal Babasar Ro'ino Tol Kozman Shebit Ve'eno Nira Me'ol Tzarich Lemulo Ve'im Lav Eno Tzarich Lemulo. That Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel worded it a little bit differently. He said a child who is heavy, who's overweight, we look at him. If when he is erect he doesn't seem mahul, he doesn't seem circumcised, then you have to fix it. But if he doesn't seem, if at that point, if not, if he doesn't not seem circumcised, okay, so he words it in the negative, then you don't have to fix it. In other words, Shmuel said it in the positive. If when he's erect it looks circumcised, it's good. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel said, if when he's erect he doesn't look circumcised, it's bad. Sounds like the same thing in two different ways, right? Okay, so the Gemara says, "My beinayu, ika beinayu, nira ve'no nira." So the Gemara says that there's a difference between the two of them, because according to Shmuel, nira mahul means that it has to be that you look completely circumcised when you're in an erect state, when the baby's in an erect state. Otherwise, anything less than complete, you have to fix it. According to Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, when the child is in an erect state, it's enough that he doesn't appear uncircumcised. Meaning, even if he appears partially uncircumcised, when he's in an erect state, we wouldn't require you to go back and fix it, since we know that that's just an artifact of the fact that he's overweight. Okay, we're not going to require you to remove that extra skin. So partial for Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel is still okay, because he doesn't seem uncircumcised. For Shmuel, he has to seem totally free of any skin in that area, totally circumcised when he's in an erect state, and that is that. Yeah, it has to be. There's a middle category, right? Exactly. There's a gray area. There's a gray area. So mal velo para. What happens if a person circumcises and doesn't remove the membrane? Now that's not really what this is going to comment on. But Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis taught Hamal Omer, when somebody performs the mitzvah of circumcision, he says Asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu ala milah. Akbu is Asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. Okay, he says the blessing like any other mitzvah. God sanctified us with His commandments and commanded us to perform milah. Avia ben Omer Asher kiddishanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lachniso b'vrito shel Avraham Avinu. Okay, so the father says, Hashem, you commanded us to enter the child into the covenant of Abraham, our forefather. Ha'omdim omrim, and those standing around say, Kishem shenichnas laberit, or as the Bach has on the side, Kishem shenichnasto laberit, kach tachnisehu l'Torah. That's how he says that it should be. But here we have Kishem shenichnas laberit, kach yikanes l'Torah, just as he has entered. In other words, you talk about the child. Just as he has entered into the covenant, so should he enter into Torah, the chuppah, and good deeds ulamasim tovim. So in the Gemara's version, it sounds like it's speaking about the child. In the Bach's amended version from the Tosefta, it sounds like it has to be. It should be that the child is being spoken about in the as an object. In other words, that the sheichnasto. Just as you, in other words, they're addressing the father. They're not talking about the baby entering the covenant, but they're addressing the father and saying, just as you entered him into the covenant, and so on. Okay, so now, V'hamivarech Omer, and then the blesser says, now we know this is, in other words, what we would call this today is the one naming the baby. Let's say this blessing, right? Asher kidesh yedid mi beten, chok b'sherosam. This is not exactly our girsa. It's similar, but not exactly. Okay, who sanctified the beloved one from birth, placed a statute in his flesh, and he sealed his descendants with the sign of the holy covenant. Alken, therefore, b'scharzot, in this merit, el chayk chelkenu, living God, our portion. Tzaveh, some have tziva, some have tzaveh. Usually the Minhag Ashkenaz and most of the Sfaradim, they say tzaveh, which is based on the shach in your idea. Tziva is some of them have that. Some of the like the Temanim have tziva, and some of the others have tziva latzil yedidut she'erenu mishachat. That Hashem commanded that by virtue of fulfilling this precept of circumcision, He would save yedidut she'erenu mishachat. He would save our remnant from destruction. Leman brito shesam b'vsarenu, that for the sake of the covenant that He placed in our flesh. Baruch atah Hashem korei haberit. Blessed are you, Hashem, who cut the covenant. covenant, in other words, to establish the covenant. Now, so it's either tzaveh, you're asking Hashem, please Hashem, in the merit of this mitzvah, order, command the forces of the world that we should be saved. Or it means tziva, it's describing, it's saying Hashem commanded, or, decreed, that because of this mitzvah we wouldn't be destroyed. Okay, so either way we read it, there, and both of these girsaot are found in various sidurim. Hamal et hagerim omer, somebody who circumcises convert says, Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu v'tzavav ala milah. So every time you do this, you say ala milah, same blessing. V'amivarech omer asher kiddushanu v'tzavav v'tzivanu, and then one who blesses after the milah is performed says, Lamul et hagerim, that Hashem, you commanded us to circumcise converts, ulahatif mehem dam berit, and to draw from them the blood of the covenant. She'ilmale dam berit lo nitkaimu shamayim va'aretz, because if it were not for the blood of the covenant, the heavens and earth would not continue to exist. Shenemar, as it says, Im lo beriti yomam v'layla chukot shamayim va'aretz lo samti, because it says, if it were not for my covenant day and night, then the laws of heaven and earth I would not have placed in motion. Baruch atah Hashem koret habrit. Blessed are you, Hashem, who makes the covenant. And Hamalat Avadim, somebody who circumcises slaves, Omer, Asher Kiddushanu v'tzavav ala milah. Of course, the generic blessing on performing the milah. And then, V'amvarech Omer, Asher Kiddushanu v'tzavav v'tzivanu lamulat Avadim. So then you have the longer blessing. Hashem, you commanded us to circumcise servants or slaves, Ulatif mehem dam berit, and to draw from them the blood of the covenant. She'il maleh dam berit, chukot shamayim v'aretz lo netkaimu, shene'emar, im lo beriti yomam v'layla, chukot shamayim v'aretz lo samti, Baruch atah Hashem koret berit. That the same blessing basically that you say on gerim, on converts, that describes how if it were not for the blood of the covenant, then the heavens and the earth would not continue to exist, is said also when you circumcise avadim, when you circumcise slaves, which effectively is also a conversion, because they become Jewish as a result. Hadran alach Rabbi Eliezer Demilah, Hadran alach Rabbi Eliezer Demilah, Hadran alach Rabbi Eliezer Demilah. And just as a point here to highlight, so there is a machloket, a major machloket Rishonim about the order of these berachot, with some of the Rishonim saying that the blessing of Lachniso b'vrito shel Avraham Avinu should be before the Brit Milah. Because really the father is bringing the child into the covenant when he appoints. In other words, he doesn't perform the actual circumcision, but he appoints somebody else to do it. So when he places the baby on the lap or on the place where it's going to be circumcised, he should say the blessing then. And that's what the Rambam has. That's what many Rishonim have. And that's actually what the common Minhag Sfaradim is today. Minhag Sfaradim is to say the blessing before. And the Rambam's son has a teshuvah where he says that he saw his father do this many times, and this was how it was done. Now, there are other Rishonim that say exactly as we have here in the Gemara, that first you say Ala Milah, and then you say Lachniso b'vrito shel Avraham Avinu when the Milah is done. So what happened was, you have these two extremes. So the Rosh came along, I believe it was the Rosh, came along and said, a pshara. I'm going to make a compromise. What's the compromise? We know that if you do the Brit Milah, but you haven't removed the membrane yet, that the mitzvah is not complete. So the compromise is going to be, we don't know whether we're supposed to say that Lachniso b'vrito shel Avraham Avinu before the Brit Milah or after. So what we're going to do? Do it after the Brit, after the Milah, but before the Pari'ah. After the cutting of the foreskin, but before the membrane is removed. So that's let's do it now.
As soon as I'm done.
Right, that's why he signals the father in Ashkenazi Brit Milah. He signals the father when to say the blessing of Lachniso b'vrito shel Avraham Avinu, because it has to be exactly at the midpoint in doing the mitzvah. This is very similar, by the way, to the issue of washing hands and saying the beracha, where there are some who say when you're supposed to say al netilat yadayim, it's before you say the blessing, before you wash the hands. That's what most of the Rishonim say. And then there are some that say actually after you wash your hands is when you should say the beracha. So therefore, what do? After you wash, before you dry. Why? So therefore, if it's really supposed to be before the mitzvah, well, I didn't finish the mitzvah because I didn't dry my hands. Okay? If it's supposed to be after, well, I already washed. So you have a compromise formation there as well. Now, this is the practice. So the Sfaradim generally nowadays have started to go back to the old tradition of the Rambam, not what it says in the Shulchan Aruch, because the Shulchan Aruch actually endorses the Rosh and says that we should do the compromise. Say Lachniso b'vrito shel Avraham Avinu in between Milah and Pari'ah. However, the common practice today has gone back to the older sources and has been lately to say Lachniso b'vrito shel Avraham Avinu before the Brit Milah even begins. There's another issue in halacha, which is when the father performs the Brit Milah. According to the Rambam and according to the Shulchan Aruch, he shouldn't say al hamilah. He should say lamul et haben. Hashem, you commanded me lamul et haben, to circumcise the child. Not al hamilah. Al hamilah is something said when you're a shaliach for somebody else, when you are doing the mitzvah on behalf of somebody else. But lamul et haben is when you're doing something that is a personal mitzvah for you, because there's a personal component to it when the father fulfills the mitzvah himself. And that's what the Shulchan Aruch says. However, the common practice among Ashkenazim is that whether the mohel is doing it or the father is doing it, he says al hamilah. According to Sfaradim, who follow the Shulchan Aruch, the halacha should be that if a father is the mohel and he performs the berit, he should say the blessing lamul et haben, not al hamilah.